Hello, and welcome to the Judo Way of Life podcast. If you've been with us before, welcome back, and if this is your first time listening, thank you for joining us. Today, I'll be talking with 2016 Olympian and Australian representative in the under 60 kilo category, Josh Katz. Josh is one of the youngest ever judoka from Australia to compete at the Olympics. He is a 4-time senior Oceania champion, 3-time Australian senior national champion, and has medalled at numerous World and European Cup events, including winning a gold at the Oceania Open. How's it going, Josh? Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, mate.
Maybe I'd like to start with your backstory, how you got into judo and where it's taken you.
Yeah, so judo when I was 5 officially. Both my parents have been involved in judo their whole life. My mum, dad both competing internationally. Mum went to the Olympics. Dad was the coach. So my older brother Nathan, a couple of years older than me, he started judo similar age. So I guess I was from birth, I guess, just surrounded by judo all the time, seeing mum and dad coaching almost every night of the week. Nathan obviously was training a couple of years before me, so I just naturally, I guess, progressed from sitting on the sides and watching to wrestling on the side to joining in on the session as well. So I started training officially at our club in Sydney, Budokan, when I was 5, and then still training at the same club, still have mum and dad as our main coaches, and still training with Nathan as our main training partner. So it's been a very big family affair, I guess, my judo so far in my life.
So I have a little brother, and one of the reasons why we started going to judo was because we'd get in trouble for wrestling at home. And my parents were like, right, go to judo, there's an outlet, you know. Did you ever get in trouble for doing judo at home, or was it encouraged to keep practicing the sport?
I think we used to wrestle a lot when we were kids at home, and I guess mum and dad really liked it when we were kids because I guess they could see how much that we enjoyed just, I guess, like the little bit of competitiveness between each other, but also like we were practicing the judo things at home. I guess it started to get a little bit out of hand when we started to get a little bit older, and then when you throw someone and they miss the bed, or you throw someone, they roll off the bed and you put a hole in the wall, then they're not quite as happy about the situation anymore. So we were pretty much fighting at full effort until we were about 14 or 15, or until I was about 14 or 15. And by that point, it's like, all right, pull your head in, guys. Like you're putting a hole in the wall every time you throw someone. So by that point, yeah, we had to pack it in a little bit. But definitely, mum and dad used to love it when we were young, as long as we weren't breaking anything.
Did you do any other sports when you were a kid, or was judo pretty much, as you say, because obviously it would have been a family affair? Were you just focused on that from straight away, really?
No, I did a lot of sports actually. I played tennis and soccer. I guess I wasn't super strong at tennis, so I played that until I was about 11 or 12, and then just I guess 3 sports. The load is ridiculous for mum and dad and for me as well. So dropped tennis when I was about 11 or 12, and then playing soccer and judo until I was about, I think I was 15 when my last year of soccer. And to be honest, I always actually thought I would end up playing soccer. I just naturally enjoyed the game, I think, a little bit more, but the training aspect, I wasn't a huge fan. Like I would always really enjoy training with the team and doing a lot of stuff as a group, but I never particularly found a lot of motivation training for soccer by myself. So I was playing in a pretty strong team in a rep team, and then the team wanted to go up a league. They'd been promoted to a high level league, and mum and dad and the team actually said to me, they said, look, we want you to come with us, but you're going to have to pull back a little bit on the judo. Like you can't afford to miss a game like once every month because there's a judo competition, or you can't come late to training, or we want to add an extra day of training, stuff like that. And mum and dad had pretty much sort of prepared me that year to make a decision because it was my first year of cadets in judo. So I had the opportunity to represent Australia, and they said, look, you're getting at the point now where you can be pretty good at both of these sports, or you can really start to excel in one of the sports, but you're going to have to make a decision at the end of the year. And they really didn't put any pressure on me either way. They said, whatever the decision is, like if you're going to be the one to be good at the sport or to train really hard in whatever it is, then it has to be the one that you choose. And gradually, I think throughout that year, I started leaning a lot more towards judo because I was enjoying the training process a lot more, whereas soccer was really mostly just about the games. And I knew that in terms of getting to a high level internationally for judo or soccer, I mean, I hadn't seen it either way, but I knew that whatever it was going to be, I had to do a lot more training than what I was doing. And ultimately, yeah, judo was the one that I had a lot more motivation for. And I guess also seeing Nathan, who was a couple of years ahead of me, had started traveling a little bit overseas and committed to judo a little bit more seriously towards the end of school, then I sort of saw a path that I could follow as well, which I think was really useful. And in the end, yeah. So I think I was 15 when I fully concentrated on judo, and then obviously after finishing high school, then started training full time.
And how old were you when you competed at the 2016 Olympics?
I was 18, so I finished school 2015, and then started traveling straight away, competing at a couple of events, and then qualified officially, I think, April 2016. So I was about 18 and a half years. So it was definitely a pretty insane 9 months going from high school to the Olympics. But yeah, I'm obviously extremely grateful that I had the opportunity to do that, and it definitely changed my outlook on life after school for sure.
Yeah, it must have been quite an intense 3 years from deciding at 15, okay, this is what I'm going to go and do, and then 3 years later going to the Olympics. I mean, what did those 3 years look like in terms of training and competitions?
Yeah, so mum and dad were pretty strict on my performance at school. They were 100% invested in anything I wanted to do judo wise. So if I ever wanted to go and compete overseas or in the school holidays, I went overseas and trained at Cambly, as you were there the first couple of times I went there, which was awesome. So I used to go over there in the school holidays. But yeah, they were fully supportive of anything I wanted to do judo wise. But at the same time, I had to be good at school, so I wasn't really allowed to miss school for a lot. Unless there was a big competition that I was selected for, and obviously you can't decide what dates the competitions are. But yes, so from about 15, 16, then I was training before school every morning, just at home, every afternoon or every night, doing some sort of judo or gym or something. And then, yeah, trying to take as many opportunities as I could to either extend a trip that I was doing with the team and try to train a little bit more by myself overseas, or during the Christmas holidays, then going over to Cambly, which was an amazing experience to be able to do that for 2 or 3 years before I left school. And then, yeah, I guess it was the biggest thing was just trying to balance the time. So whenever I was at school, I was at school. Whenever I was away from school, I was training. So I tried as much as I could to never let one affect the other one too much.
Did you enjoy school?
It's a funny one because I had a lot of good mates at school, and I enjoyed, I guess, spending time with them. But I think in year 12, especially, when I could see what I was missing out on in terms of traveling and competing and training, even, that I really didn't enjoy being at school because I just knew what it was taking me away from. I thought because at that point I was starting to get very organized with my time and balancing my work. I was like, man, I could do all of this work in such a shorter period of time, and then I could spend more time training and I could travel. And year 12 especially, I didn't really enjoy. And I mean, especially as I was starting to commit more to judo, then there was less, I guess, social events I was going to, or if I was away for the whole holidays, then obviously a couple of trips with mates and stuff like that I couldn't go to. So I guess my friendship circle started to get a little bit smaller as less and less people, I guess, understand what it is that I was doing. But yeah, towards the end of school, I was definitely glad to move on. And it's obviously I'm still good friends with the people I was friends with at the time. But yeah, I was very glad to be able to just invest all of my time in judo and not be held back by anything.
Was the Olympics always a goal of yours, or was that something that sort of evolved very quickly?
The Olympics in general was always a goal of mine. I really had no expectation or no aim to qualify for Rio. I guess just being at school, just the fact that I was at school for, I mean, almost 3/4 of the Olympic qualifying process, like that was just not even on my radar at all until I'd left school. But the Olympic goal itself was something that I'd had since I was really, really little. Me and Nathan together as brothers, like we'd always had a goal together to qualify for the Olympics and to compete at the Olympics together, which we were in the end we were extremely lucky to be able to share that experience together. But Rio specifically wasn't really ever a target until early 2016 when I'd had my first sort of breakthrough as a senior and won a medal in a World Cup at the time in Tunisia. So after that result, then the rather than traveling with the team just for experience, which the coaches were sort of bringing me along to these senior tournaments for some experience, and then at that point it was like, okay, well maybe you can come with us because you're actually getting some pretty decent results. So that sort of breakthrough took me to the next couple of events in South America, which I managed to fight for a medal in one of them again, and then that pretty much turned over right into the last Oceania tournament in April, which was the last qualifier. And by that point, it was, if you win gold here, then you've pretty much solidified your spot at the game. So, I mean, it was all, the whole idea of the Olympics pretty much started, or the whole idea of Rio pretty much started and finished in about January to April of 2016. So it was a very different experience, I guess, to this current cycle where you're sort of planning and preparing for 4 years. It was a bit of a whirlwind, really. I guess in a way it was good because I never had a chance to overthink it or to really get caught up in the moment too much. It was just like go, go, go for that whole 4 months to qualify and then straight into the Olympics. So it was a very exciting, but it was a pretty hectic time as well.
And what was competing at the Olympics like?
I mean, the experience of competing at the Olympics was incredible. I was very grateful that we were able to get there a week before the Olympics started. So we moved into the village about 7 days before the first day, and I was competing on the first day. So you sort of had the first 2 or 3 days to really get caught up in all the free stuff you're getting and all the gadgets and the food hall and all this sort of crazy stuff that I guess you can get out of your system before you have to really dial in and concentrate on the competition, which we're pretty lucky to be able to do. And I mean, I guess you say the right things and you do all this media and they're saying, oh, like, what are your chances of a medal and all that sort of stuff. And I guess in a way you do believe that you always have a chance to win a medal, but realistically, my expectations were fairly low at that Olympics. I definitely had earned my place to be there with some of the results I had, but the quality of the competition at that Olympics, I was there really just for the experience of the Olympics. I guess there was definitely quite a lot of people I was capable of beating, but in terms of winning a medal, it wasn't something that was really on the cards for me at the time. So, but the experience as a whole was just incredible, and I guess being so young as well, I was very much caught up in the excitement of the village and the food hall and all the athletes, and straight after the competition, like going and watching other sports and going out and partying and all that sort of stuff. So I guess it was something that at a young age, it prepares you for hopefully another experience this year, and then hopefully again in 4 years where you already know what to expect and it's sort of out of your system already, where you're going there more on a mission to just get a result rather than just the experience.
As you say, you already alluded to the fact that the lead up to this Olympics has been very different. How has the past 2 years been for you? How has it been different?
It's been really challenging for me personally. I guess we having a 4-year cycle just concentrating on the Olympics is obviously very different compared to last time. But I was struggling with a lot of injuries 2018, 2019. So I think I only competed in about 2 or 3 Olympic qualifying events during that first 50% qualifying period, which was very frustrating at the time because I was just felt like I was starting to make some big strides as a senior and starting to get some good results at a European Cup and World Cup level, but just wasn't getting enough opportunities to fight on the World Tour. Just struggling with injuries, and I had some weight management issues, and it was really, really challenging period. And then felt like I was starting to get into a bit of a stride again, coming back from injury in 2020, and then COVID hit. So I guess being from Australia, it's hard to complain too much about the COVID situation because the life here now is really 100% normal, and we were really lucky to be able to carry on life without too much impact. In the same instance where we rely so much on being able to travel and compete internationally with on training camps and just getting the exposure to international training, because we just don't have the volume of partners at home in Sydney or even anywhere in Australia really. So I guess last year was challenging as well, because we could see some other countries that really didn't take COVID too seriously, just pretty much carrying on training normal. And we were either restricted with our training or locked up or isolation at home and stuff like that. So that was a little bit frustrating, but we just had to, I guess, trust the work that we were putting in at the time. And then when we did finally get the opportunity to start competing again this year, to maximize the opportunity. And yeah, I guess the most frustrating thing was just a lot of the unknown when we were preparing for a competition that was maybe on, maybe not on, and then it got pulled out a couple of weeks before, and then that was October. We were supposed to go for our first tournament last year. The federation decided, or we as a team decided, that it just wasn't, it wasn't safe at the time for us to travel. And then we wanted to compete again in November at our Continental Championships, and then about 2 weeks before, the event was cancelled itself. So I guess that was the most challenging part of the whole, 2020 COVID year, was just sort of building yourself up for events that you weren't sure if they were going to happen or not. And then when they get cancelled, it's pretty gutting, because you really don't know when or if you're going to be able to compete again. And yeah, we've been very lucky to be able to travel this year, because 99% of Australia isn't allowed to leave anywhere and go anywhere, and the rest of the judo community hasn't got any competitions to compete in. So I guess now we're grateful to be able to travel again, but it was definitely a challenge last year for sure.
How were you able to stay motivated to keep training with such uncertainty last year?
Yeah, it was difficult, and I guess we actually were talking about this a couple of weeks. I think if they had have told us in April or May when we came home that you wouldn't compete again until January of 2021, I think I really wouldn't have been able to train at the volume or intensity that I was doing, or that me and Nathan were doing for so long. So in a way, that all of that uncertainty kept us on track a little bit, because we were always thinking in the back of our minds, maybe in 6 weeks we'll be competing somewhere. So it was a strange thing, because now looking back on it, I am a little bit grateful that we sort of had the illusion that we might be competing in June and then July and then August and September. And we just kept pushing this date back in our head that we were going to compete again this year. So we were training way, way harder and doing way more volume of training than we would have otherwise. So in a way, I am a little bit grateful that we had that opportunity, because we had really 6 months of really high volume, intense training leading up to those events that we thought were going to take place in late of 2020. But then, leading into 2021 was a very challenging experience for me as well, because I had sort of been preparing to compete or the start of February or mid-February, which was the date that I was going to compete in Israel, the first one of this year, because I wasn't able to qualify for the Masters directly. And then about a week before the competition, on New Year's Eve, they got a call and said, you've got a late call up for the Masters. So it was pretty insane that I had been waiting probably 10 months to compete in a competition, and then I was going to get notification to fight on 10 days notice. So it definitely wasn't the preparation that I had been expecting I was going to have for my first event. And it definitely wasn't the performance that I was hoping I was going to be able to have with such limited preparation and that. But it was, I guess, with how crazy 2020 was, that was the perfect way to start 2021, I guess.
And then how's it been since then over the past 4 months now? Have you been in any other competitions?
Yep. So after the Masters in January, we came home and did the 2 weeks quarantine, and I had about a month at home. I had a week at home in Sydney. And just because Nathan had injured himself, then I felt like I needed a little bit of more training exposure in Melbourne. So I did a week of training in Melbourne, and then went back overseas again. So my recent overseas trip was from about early to mid-February until just recently in mid-April. So it was a pretty long and it was a very draining experience. There was 5 competitions we competed in. And a lot of what I enjoy about the traveling experience has been taken away now, because you're traveling in at every competition, you're staying in hotel bubbles, and we had so many absolutely crazy experiences with airports and flights getting cancelled and visas getting cancelled and all that sort of madness. So the first probably month of the trip was just a disaster from every point of view. I was fighting pretty badly in the two tournaments that I fought in Israel and then in Tashkent in Uzbekistan. And I guess when you're at these competitions and you're not really enjoying the experience of the competition, because you don't get to go out of your hotel and you don't really get to see many people. You're sitting in a bubble, and then if you fight badly in the competition, it just amplifies all of those problems and makes it even worse, because you can put up with all of those negative things when if you fight well and you do well. But then if you do badly in the competition, especially if you fight badly as well, then it just makes you really like reconsider, like, what are you actually doing here? Like, you're going through all of this and then you fight badly at the end of it. So it was definitely the most challenging, I think, experience I've had traveling before. A lot of anxiety I was getting pretty much just every time we went to an airport or got on a plane, and we were finding out at the gate whether or not we were actually going to be allowed on the flight or not. To be honest, it wasn't the most enjoyable experience, but I was really glad that towards the end of the trip, I started to get a lot more confident in my training again, started to get a little bit more consistency of training as our travel situation started to become a little bit more stable, and we were staying in one place a little bit more often. So it was a little bit easier to start to make some improvements training wise, having been at home for so long. And then in the second last competition of the trip in Antalya, I won 2 fights and lost in the round of 16. And then the last one in the Asian Championships, I finished 5th and was able to get a really good win against someone in the top 10. So it was a great way to finish out the trip and to give me a lot more momentum going into sort of the tail end of this qualifying period. So I guess I would have much rather having a better experience, either just the early competitions or the whole traveling process been a little bit smoother, but grateful that I was able to finish the trip on a high note and get some good results, and my best results really that I think I've had thus far. So yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I say that result in the Asian Championships was, as you say, very important. And I think a lot can be said for the building of momentum. Do you feel as though, like you say, that was something that sort of helped, being away for that solid block, even though it was quite mentally challenging in some ways? Do you think the fact that you were able to build that momentum helped?
Yeah, 100%. I think it definitely added a little bit of resilience the whole time. It really made me reflect a little bit on why I was away in the first place, having not been able to really enjoy the places you were going to or the experiences of the hotels and competitions and stuff like that. It made you really dial in a little bit more on why you're there, which was just for the competitions and to try to fight well. So definitely, as we started to get a little bit more stability with our travel and we weren't bouncing between countries so frequently, and we had a couple of weeks, I guess, between the first 2 competitions and then the last 3, we sort of had 3 weeks of training and just concentrating really hard on building, like you were saying, building that momentum over the 3 weeks and just concentrating on the things I was able to control. It was a nice way to finish the trip for sure.
And what have the competitions been like? Because as a spectator, I watch the World Tour, but you see you're not allowed to shake hands anymore at the end. But I'm pretty sure that maybe that's changed. But still, you weren't, certain things that you're so used to being able to do, you're not allowed to do. Was there anything sort of behind the scenes? What was the warm up area like?
I mean, I think they're changing some of the rules on the fly, to be honest. Like the first competition, they were like so strict on not shaking hands, and then the last one, you could pretty much shake hands if you wanted to, but some people still feel a little bit funny about it, and some people fist bump, and it's all a little bit of a mess, to be honest. I guess each country takes a bit of their own spin on the rules. I guess at the day of the competition itself, things are pretty much like they would normally be at a normal competition. I mean, otherwise everyone's wearing a mask, but generally the day of the competition is pretty much the same thing, other than most of the competitions, there's no spectators in the stands, so it's pretty quiet. But I guess the biggest changes are around at the hotel. So you're not allowed to leave your hotel for any reason at all. All of the training, the weigh-in, the everything is at the hotel. So you really are stuck in, if you get there 4 days before the competition, you sit in your room for 4 days, and the only really time you're allowed to leave your room is to train or to go to meals. So it's definitely not as enjoyable of an experience. You don't really see anything. I mean, I think I counted on this recent trip, I'd been 4 countries I'd never been to before, and the only thing I saw was my hotel room and the competition venue. So it definitely doesn't feel like you're experiencing the world, I guess, as much as normal. But in terms of the competition, it's just a little bit of an adjustment. I think the first 2 were really strange experience when you have to quarantine in your room and you're not allowed to leave your hotel, and you're getting told off if you don't wear your mask anywhere other than just pretty much on the mat. But I guess we've learned to adjust a little bit more. I think just the more you're surrounded by the environment, you sort of get acclimatized to it. And then we come back to Australia and we see people not wearing masks and everything seems really weird again. So I think we're a little bit more accustomed to the rest of the world now, which is pretty badly affected by COVID. So it's nice to come home, or close to home anyway, in hotel quarantine, and see the world is pretty much back to normal again here.
And I think yesterday we saw that it was the 100 days until the Olympics. What's the next 100 days going to look like for you?
So we have another week of hotel quarantine in Sydney at the moment, and then we have about 5.5 weeks of training of time to prepare for the World Championships, which is the last qualifying tournament of the cycle. So we'll travel to Budapest for the World Championships, and I'm feeling fairly confident that if I'm able to produce my best effort on that day, then I can secure qualifying. I guess it's nice to know that I don't need to fight at a crazy above my level. I just need to perform at my best, and maybe a few things need to fall your way, but I guess that's judo. Sometimes, occasionally, you just need a little bit of good fortune. But if I'm able to produce that effort at the Worlds, then we'll stay overseas for, I think there's about 6 weeks between the World Championships until the Olympics. So stay overseas. I'm not really sure what that period will look like. I guess as you secure qualification, then the Olympic team starts to get a little bit more involved and things like that. But really, for me at the moment, is just focused on getting to the World Championships in as good shape as possible, and producing my best effort there. And hopefully that's enough. And at that point, then just, I guess, ride the wave until the Olympics. That last sort of 6 weeks is, I imagine, will be pretty crazy of whatever it involves. So I'm excited for that period, especially.
And I suppose it obviously dependent on what happens during that period. But after the Olympics, do you have any other goals? Anything else you're working towards?
Yeah, so I'm studying part-time at the moment, just online. So I think I would probably try to get a little bit more of that uni degree done. I guess now, being in 2021, the Commonwealth Games next year, you probably aren't going to look at having as long a break as I maybe would have had last year if the Olympics was last year. So I'm not exactly sure, to be honest, what the rest of the year will look like after Tokyo. I've really just been so concentrated on getting there, and then I guess depending on the result you're able to get in Tokyo, and I guess the physical and mental state that you're in after what will have been a very, very intense 9 months, then I guess, yeah, just enjoy that period at home and to start fresh in 2022. But it's hard to look too far ahead, I think, especially been away for so much of this year, and will now be away again for another pretty long block for the World Championships, and then hopefully for the Olympics. Then definitely not looking to travel anywhere anytime soon, just to enjoy some time at home and, yeah, enjoy the experience post Olympics, because it doesn't come around very often. So I think I'll be glad to be at home for a little bit after that.
And what are you studying at university?
Exercise, sports science, and sports management. So I've been studying part-time for the last 3 or 4 years, just gradually increasing my load as I'm able to get a little bit more comfortable with balancing study and travel at the same time. So ideally, I would like to be finished by either the end of next year or the start of 2022. So I'm about 2/3 or coming up to 3/4 of the way done. So hopefully another year or year and a half, and I'll be finished.
And is there a plan in terms of using the degree? Is there a job in mind or sort of a pathway
Oh,
to anything
these
else?
are the hard hitting questions. I'm not 100% sure yet, I guess, what it looks like for me straight after finishing the degree. I guess just been focused on judo and getting it done at the time, and I've been setting up some work at home on the side that me and Nathan have been looking at for the last couple of years. And I guess after this sort of Olympic period finishes, then trying to spend a little bit more time setting up that sort of thing. But yeah, in terms of using a degree, I don't want to seem like I don't have a plan, but at the moment it's pretty one way at the moment. We'll figure it out once we get there.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I did my degree 10 years ago and I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to do with it. So absolutely no pressure, that one.
It's nice to know that you turned out okay in the end, so it's not the worst thing.
I don't know if I'll go that far just yet, but yeah, I'm working on it.
Yeah.
All right, mate. I think we'll wrap it up there. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to talk. As I know you're in quarantine and things are a little bit different, but yeah, still appreciate you sitting down and sharing your story. And
no, perfect, man. Thanks for having me, and it's awesome that you're able to have this platform to share some different athletes. So yeah, appreciate it.
And before we finish, is there anyone you want to sort of thank you? Any sponsors that you have?
4D Health and Performance that have been lucky enough to set us up with some equipment in quarantine. Obviously, my judo club at home, Budokan Judo Club, and then just Triangle Effect Management, which is the main supporter of me and Nathan to help us with any sort of corporate sponsorship and stuff as well. So much appreciated to all of them.
Look forward to seeing you back on the mat again soon. It'd be good to have a few rounds before you shoot off again.
Yeah, looking forward to catching up soon, mate.
All right, look after yourself.
Thanks, mate.